Ladies and gentlemen of faith, this season marks a defining moment in history, the rise of Pope Leo XIV, the first American pontiff, Augustinian visionary, and passionate peacebuilder. In a church craving renewal, he now stands at the helm, armed with the authority to shock, to reform, to redefine the global Catholic Church. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore the 10 earth-shaking decisions only Pope Leo XIV can make, decisions that will reverberate through halls of power and hearts of believers worldwide. Stay with us, because change begins now. 1. Declare permanent zero tolerance on abuse. On June 5, 2025, history shook within Vatican walls. Pope Leo XIV, America's first pope, sat down for a full hour with the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. The agenda? Nothing less than a broken promise to survivors worldwide, true zero tolerance for abuse. Survivors and advocates demanded sweeping change. They're calling for immediate removal of every clergy member credibly accused, no exceptions, no delays. Among the high-profile cases again on the table, Reverend Marco Rupnik, the Jesuit-turned-artist, with more than 24 women accusing him of spiritual, psychological, and sexual abuse, and yet still active in ministry amid stalled proceedings. We've waited years. We need a policy that isn't just words, one that acts. The Commission, launched under Pope Francis, headed by Cardinal O'Malley, outlined a universal guidelines framework for safeguarding, due later this year. But for survivors, frameworks are not enough. They want a permanent, irrevocable decree, one mirroring the U.S. Charter for Protection, once credibly accused, always removed from ministry. Equally urgent, the Rupnik case. In March, the Vatican still hadn't found judges for his trial. Meanwhile, his mosaics were quietly removed from official Vatican websites, but only after a fierce survivor-led campaign. Pope Leo XIV has personal credibility, once dismantling abusive movements in Peru. But critics ask, will he go further now, shedding structural complacency within the hierarchy? For survivors, only a binding zero-tolerance decree, issued directly from the chair of Peter, can cleanse centuries of abuse and betrayal. So here's what to watch next. 1. Will Leo XIV's decree include permanent removal of credibly accused clergy? 2. Will he waive statutes of limitation, especially for abusers of vulnerable adults like Rupnik? 3. Will he authorize a Vatican tribunal for bishops accused of cover-ups? These are Pope-level decisions, only he can act. In the Vatican's next response, we'll see if words turn into action. Stay with us, because the Church's soul hangs in the balance. 2. Fully remove Rupnik's artwork and refuse all posthumous honors. Following Vatican News' dramatic removal of Father Marco Rupnik's mosaics on June 7 to 9, survivors are now demanding more than digital erasure. They want a papal decree banning any display or posthumous praise of his work. The removal spanned feast day artwork, from the memorial of the Blessed Virgin Mary to the Assumption, and even extended to Vatican News liturgical content. Survivors described the impact. I saw it and simply felt relieved. You don't know how much this gesture means to me. But this was only a first step. Rome's communications prefect Paolo Ruffini initially resisted, calling removals not a Christian response, yet Cardinal O'Malley later emphasized pastoral prudence, urging that displaying Rupnik's art risked signaling indifference to survivors' pain. Across the globe, churches followed suit. Mosaics were covered at Lourdes and Washington, D.C. St. John Paul II Shrine. The Shrine of Lourdes said exposed art was incompatible with its mission to welcome all people, especially survivors. Pope Leo XIV can now move beyond symbolic digital removal. Only he can issue a binding decree stripping church venues and Vatican institutions of Rupnik's art, and forbidding any future honors, posthumous exhibitions, academic awards, or Vatican citations. This can restore dignity, not just erase images. Questions to watch. Will Pope Leo XIV go further than Vatican News and local shrines, and ban Rupnik's work in perpetuity? Will he order removal from Vatican sites, Jesuit chapels, and seminaries? And will he refuse all commemorations or academic use of his studio or writings? These are decisions only the Supreme Pontiff can mandate, to affirm survivors' worth and cleanse the Church's sacred spaces. Stay tuned, because this is about more than art. It's about justice and healing in Christ's name. 3. Monetize Vatican real estate on a huge scale. The Vatican, home to saints and sacrament, but also an empire of buildings. Now, Pope Leo XIV faces a monumental choice: unleash the Church's dormant fortune or let financial darkness deepen. Current data: over 5,400 properties worldwide, but only 20% generate market-level income. The rest provide subsidized housing or lie fallow, yielding just €35 million profit in 2023 against a €50 to €60 million yearly deficit, not to mention a €1 billion pension shortfall. Under Pope Francis, some reforms emerged: Tokyo Embassy sold, real estate management partially outsourced to Tecnicasa, and free Vatican apartments scrapped. But most buildings remain underutilized, kept for clergy or as charity hubs, not revenue. Pope Leo XIV, steeped in practical stewardship from his days in Peru, now could authorize wholesale leasing at market rates, sell non-essential properties, and repurpose others into mixed-use developments. This isn't mere austerity. It's tough love, turning assets into mission funding. With pilgrims flocking for the 2025 Jubilee, tourism income will rise, but museum entrances and donations won't solve structural debt. The real key? Monetizing property, not just riding crowds. So, will Pope Leo XIV issue a sweeping decree, overriding internal resistance, to sell unused assets and raise rent to market value? Will he commit to partnerships for sustainable revenue streams? Remember, only the Pope can mandate such transformation. He must choose: preserve a status quo that bleeds billions, or pioneer a future where Vatican assets fuel Vatican mission. Initiate a global truth and reconciliation process. Survivors and advocacy groups haven't just raised their voices, they've issued full-throated demands. SNAP, the survivors' network of those abused by priests, has expressed grave concern and is calling on Pope Leo XIV to launch a global truth commission and survivors' council within his first 100 days. SNAP's statement isn't symbolic. They want binding international agreements, transparency mandates, and a survivor-funded reparations fund. They demand structural accountability, not more promises. Global Truth Commission, binding international agreements, a global survivors' council. In Chicago, survivors marched outside Pope Leo's former diocese, warning that past handling of high-profile cases, like Father James Ray and Peruvian priests, fell short of justice. SNAP warns, you can end the abuse crisis, only question is, will you? The model exists. Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission convened to confront church-run residential schools, emerging with clear calls to action, like educating congregations and forming councils to oversee reparations. Pope Leo XIV has the unique authority to mandate a Vatican-blessed, global process. And survivors want nothing less. Only a papal decree can require bishops worldwide to hand over files, collaborate across borders, and fund survivor-led reparations. If he acts, the Church could take a transformative path, facing systemic failures with humility, granting survivors a voice, and demonstrating Christ's call to justice and mercy. Up next, will Leo XIV move from words to world-changing structures? Will he summon a council, empower survivors, and lay truth, justice and healing at the heart of the Church's renewal? The world watches, and history awaits his decision. 5. Unilaterally restate Church teaching on same-sex blessings. In his first diplomatic address, Pope Leo XIV reaffirmed what he called the timeless definition of marriage, the stable union between a man and a woman, yet notably left open the debate on non-liturgical blessings for same-sex couples. This comes against the backdrop of Pope Francis's December 2023 Fiducia Supplicans, which permits pastoral blessings for same-sex couples so long as they do not resemble a marriage ceremony. The document stresses blessings must be short and simple, non-liturgical, and not marital in tone. Faithful observers now wonder, will Leo XIV affirm this pastoral flexibility, or will he chart a more conservative path, unilaterally restating the Church's stance through a papal decree? Only he has the authority to override, or clarify, the ambiguity left by Fiducia Supplicans. A papal decree here could settle the debate, definitively endorsing or restricting these blessings globally. Key to this debate, bishop conferences have begun interpreting fiducia supplicans differently. Some are embracing the flexibility, others fear it blurs doctrinal boundaries. Without a papal statement, confusion grows, and unity frays. Pope Leo XIV could, with a unilateral decision, reaffirm the Church's non-liturgical framework while clarifying where the line is drawn. He could mandate that blessings be pastoral, private, and not ritualized, protecting doctrine while offering mercy. The questions now are stark and immediate. Will Leo XIV issue a papal decree endorsing pastoral blessings under specified conditions? Or will he revoke or narrowly limit that permission, reasserting caution against confusion with marriage? It's a papal-level decision, one that could define pastoral practice for decades. Stay tuned, because the Church's path to inclusion may hinge on his next words. 6. Convening a Council for Christian Unity to set common Easter. In early June 2025, Pope Leo XIV addressed a landmark symposium in Rome, the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, calling for Christian unity and, critically, urging a common Easter date for both East and West. At Nicaea in AD 325, bishops declared Easter should be celebrated uno diet uno tempore, on the same day worldwide. Today, calendar differences keep Catholics and Orthodox celebrating apart, though this year they aligned on April 20th. Yet unity remains elusive. Pope Leo lamented that separate celebrations divide families, fracture witness, and weaken the Church's mission, despite shared faith in the Nicene Creed. Several concrete solutions have been proposed, he noted, expressing openness to ecumenical paths forward. But talk is just the start. Only the Pope carries authority to call a council, bringing together Catholic, Orthodox, and other Christian leaders to decide a common date. It would mirror the original Nicaea in both spirit and impact. Imagine a modern-day ecumenical council, forging unity with visible action, issuing a calendar decree, coordinating with Patriarch Bartholomew, laying groundwork for shared feasts across Christendom. That's the gravity of a papal call. So the question stands, will Pope Leo XIV unilaterally convene such a council in the spirit of Nicaea? Will he echo Christ's call to unity with more than words, by setting a single date for the Feast of Feasts? Only he can guide this pivotal act that could transform global Christian unity. Stay tuned, because if he acts, history will follow. 7. Demand peace-driven action from Russia in Ukraine. On June 4, Pope Leo XIV made his first direct phone call to Vladimir Putin, an unprecedented move for a new pope. In that private conversation, he appealed for a gesture that favors peace, urging a ceasefire, prisoner exchange, and humanitarian corridors in Ukraine. The Vatican press office emphasized the Pope's moral plea, rooted in Christian values, to open humanitarian pathways and dialogue. This was not symbolic rhetoric, it was a direct challenge to those perpetuating war. Poised between diplomacy and moral urgency, Leo's voice resonated far beyond Vatican walls. In his June 8 Pentecost Mass, he condemned political nationalism and called for just peace in Ukraine, tying the Church's mission to real-world conflict resolution. He has offered Vatican grounds for mediation, though Russia has been hesitant to accept Vatican-led negotiations. Analysts note long-standing tensions with the Russian Orthodox Church, signaling possible resistance. But Pope Leo XIV wields more authority than any religious diplomat, he alone can elevate this to a global moral mandate. With a papal decree, he could formally demand Russian military withdrawal, establish protected humanitarian corridors, and launch Vatican-mediated prisoner exchanges, enforced by the moral weight of the papacy. So here's what to watch: will Pope Leo XIV escalate from prayer to papal action? Will he issue formal demands for peace, not just appeals, but firm moral imperatives, backed by Vatican mediation? Only he can wield the papal office this way. The eyes of a war-torn world are on him, and the next moment could tilt the balance toward lasting peace. 8. Formalize ecumenical synodality across global churches. Since his election, Pope Leo XIV has reiterated his commitment to synodality, a church that listens and walks together. But now he faces a historic choice: to canonize synodality across the global church by issuing a binding decree standardizing lay clergy councils in every diocese. the 2023-24 Synod on Synodality concluded by calling for greater lay participation, even giving women vote rights and advocating for parish councils, financial bodies, and episcopal selection panels with laity included. Pope Francis responded by ratifying the final synod report directly into magisterial teaching, skipping a post-synodal exhortation, signaling that structural synodality must be implemented. Pope Leo XIV, with his American pragmatism and pastoral sensitivity, could now go further. He can issue a universal decree requiring every diocese to establish mandated lay clergy councils for pastoral planning, financial oversight, and episcopal appointment consultation. This step would mark a seismic shift in church governance, fostering genuine co-responsibility, decentralizing authority, and weaving lay voices into decision-making across parishes worldwide. The questions now are profound. Will Leo XIV issue a formal decree, trusted by canon lawyers and bishops alike, to standardize lay clergy synodal councils everywhere? This is no longer theory but a papal possibility. Only he can embed synodality into the Church's bones, transforming governance from the Vatican to the parish level. If he acts, he could define Catholicism for generations. 9. Cancel or reverse historic Vatican rulings. Just days ago, an explosive video surfaced online. Did Pope Leo just cancel a historic Vatican ruling? The clip claims he reversed a centuries-old decree, launching a canon law tsunami. But what really happened, and what could he do next? The viral claim centers on Leo reportedly revoking a dogmatic ruling dating back to the Council of Trent. Though no official decree has appeared, speculation is mounting, and believers are asking, can the Pope really undo past councils? Only the pontiff holds that authority. In canon law, the Pope can rescind or reinterpret previous rulings, including historic councils, through a formal decree. But doing so risks dividing canonists, theologians, and pastors, especially if the rule is considered doctrinally foundational. This isn't the first time Leo's decision stirred shock. He's already reversed or softened Francis-era norms, reinstating access to the traditional Latin Mass, easing regulations on papal apartments. Conservatives applauded, seeing signs of doctrinal rigor returning, while progressives urged caution. To enact such a reversal, Leo XIV would need a formal motu proprio or papal bull explicitly naming and annulling the old decree. Then, canon law judges and bishops worldwide must update systems, seminaries, and liturgical norms accordingly. That's a seismic shift only a pope can authorize. So the critical questions, has Pope Leo XIV quietly issued such a reversal, or is this still speculation? If he did, which decree? Is it doctrinal or disciplinary? Can he walk back centuries of church teaching? And, for this scandal to unfold, only the Pope could do it. In our next segment, we'll uncover the documents behind the rumor and ask, will he confirm or retract? 10. Rename Pope Leo XIV as reformist figurehead. Within weeks of election, Pope Leo XIV has begun to recast the papacy, not as a relic of the past, but as a beacon for a technological age. He's already hinted at renaming Vatican departments and possibly founding an office for AI ethics and human dignity. Leo chose his name in homage to Leo XIII, the 19th-century pope who responded to the Industrial Revolution with Rerum Novarum, a social teaching that recognized workers' dignity. Now Leo XIV is echoing that legacy, tackling the AI revolution with the same moral seriousness. In January, the Vatican released Antiquarit Nova, a sweeping Vatican-wide note on AI ethics. Then, Leo convened technologists, like Paolo Benanti, and even technology CEOs, signaling that his papacy will prioritize ethical engagement with technology. But talk won't reform structures, only actions will. Analysts suggest he could issue a papal decree renaming a department of the Roman Curia, e.g. the Dicastery for Human Dignity in the Digital Age, creating an official hub for AI and ethics. Moreover, Leo could align this office under the Congregation for Social Doctrine, blending canonical authority with real-world issues like labor rights, inequality, surveillance, and warfare. He'd thus anchor his legacy in canonical reform and moral leadership. The challenge now: will Pope Leo XIV transform rhetoric into institutional change, founding a formal office dedicated to technology and human dignity? Will he rename Vatican departments, embed AI ethics in canon law, and signal a church truly engaged with the future? Only he can make that move. If he does, he'll redefine the papacy and position the church as a moral compass in a digital age. We've witnessed Pope Leo XIV wielding his supreme authority, exposing abuse, cleansing sacred spaces, reshaping calendars, and confronting modern challenges head-on. But these bold steps are only the beginning of a journey, both for the church and for our souls. As Christ's followers, we must ask ourselves, what does this call to renewal, justice, and unity demand of us? How will our hearts and communities respond if the church truly reforms from the top down? Now, reflect with us. Is Christianity inherently a reforming faith? Why or why not? What does a renewal look like in your own life, parish, or community? How can we partner with this papal vision, through prayer, accountability, or action, to bring true healing and unity? Write down your responses, pray over them, and join us in the days ahead as we explore how each of us can carry the weight of this divine invitation, because renewal in the church begins in each of our hearts.